Okay, so I always love to talk about Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman back to back because they are the non-identical twin pillars of modern American poetry, and they're the non-identical twin giants of American Enlightenment poetry. They are so, they both, of course, you know, like all more or less enlightened beings, they go to the same place. They're all about the transcendent, but they get there in just completely opposite ways. They have completely opposite personalities. You know, here's Emily Dickinson. What's her life story? 3 words. She stayed home, right? She didn't marry. She apparently was, you know, was a virgin her whole life. She never published. There's only one known photograph of her. Walt Whitman, the one place you never wanted to stand was between Walt Whitman and a camera. We have hundreds of photos. He loved posing. He was an early denizen of the downtown gay scene in Greenwich Village in its early days. He was a mediocre journalist from Long Island. And here's a photo of him here's an early iteration of Walter Whitman, as he was known then, as a dandy, right? With the boutonniere and the cane and all that, being fancy. That was Walter. Then something happened. In a June morning, apparently one fine June morning in 1853 or 1854, Walter got the juice. Something happened. He had an opening of awareness, evidently. And just had this vision of what he was and what America was and what the cosmos was and how it was all of a piece. And he allowed that vision to speak through him. And it took the form of this sprawling poem called Song of Myself, which a couple of years later he published, self-published, made the book himself. He had worked as a printer's assistant, so he was able to publish this book by himself, print it, make it by hand. And he called it, the book is called Leaves of Grass. Mostly it's Song of Myself, this huge sprawling poem with 52 sections, like 52 cards in the deck, 52 weeks in the year, plus a few other poems at the end made Leaves of Grass. And then for the rest of his life, he kept revising and expanding Leaves of Grass. What's very interesting is that the book was published, there he refers to himself, he's no longer Walter Whitman, he becomes Walt Whitman. And he no longer looks like a dandy, he looks like this. Okay, so he's in working man's, he's in a peasant blouse, open at the neck. Notice the one hand on the hip, notice the off balance hips, and notice especially the bedroom eyes. Okay, this picture this was the frontispiece of the original 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. Even just that picture made a big sensation. This was making a statement. This is not, I mean, even when someone like Thoreau posed for his picture, he was wearing his Sunday best with a tie and all that. Here's some critic writing about this stuff, did something amusing. He put that Walt Whitman picture side by side with Mick Jagger, right? Notice in both cases, the hand on the hip and the similar kind of come hither attitude, right? So we have, as we've seen for the last, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 Sundays, Emily Dickinson writing these trim clipped, she's a miniaturist, right? Writing these trimmed, clipped little manicured quatrains, these little 4-line verses, most of them all with um, the same meter, the same meter as you had in church hymns. And here we have Whitman throwing away rhyme, throwing away meter. Basically, he didn't exactly invent free verse, but he was kind of the first, or among the first, to really run with free verse, where it's poetry, but there's no regular meter to it. There's no rhyme. It's just like the vision that's coming through him is so huge. It's so sprawling. He couldn't hold it in nice, clipped little stanzas. So, and by the way, ever the whereas Emily Dickinson didn't publish in her lifetime, he was, and she wrote, "I'm nobody," right? It's just the whole thing, avoiding, just keeping her head down. Whitman was a huge self-promoter. He sent a copy of Leaves of Grass to Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was, the great man of transcendent. He was the #1 guy on the speakers. He was the Deepak Chopra sort of his time. And Emerson wrote back this congratulatory letter, basically saying, "You're the great cosmic poet we've all been waiting for." And then Whitman, of course, without asking for permission, took Emerson's letter and turned it into newspaper advertisements for the book, right? So there was nothing restrained about Walt. So let's start diving into the text. I'm going to unmute you so you can, I'll give you permission rather to unmute yourselves. So if you want to dive in at any point with questions or comments, you can do that. There's Bob. Hi, Bob. So good to see you. Really great. All right. Let me get this up on the screen. Here we go. Are you seeing the text, Song of Myself? Yes. Okay. I am not, so I'm going to have to get it on my phone. Sorry.
It's actually in your chat room.
Yeah, the link is in the chat room, but now I'm also sharing the screen.
The poem itself is there.
Right. Poetry Foundation, Song of Myself. Notice, by the way, it says 1892 version. I mentioned that he kept revising it all his life. This is what's known as the deathbed edition, the very last edition. Okay, so here we go, section 1. I celebrate myself. Bam! Okay, well, let me at least read the first little subsection first before I start pontificating. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. Okay, now, this first line, this is just huge. This is what a bold gesture. I mean, if all you read was the first line, the first half a line, I celebrate myself, you go, God, this is the most egotistical SOB who has ever put pen to paper, right? And by the way, in the original edition, the 1855 edition, the first line just says, I celebrate myself. And then in later editions, he added, and sing myself. And we go, okay, it wasn't egotistical enough. You had to double down on that. Yay, me, right? Well, maybe maybe he'll redeem himself in the second line. And what I assume, you shall assume. No, he triples down, right? It's like, I got to assume what this guy assumes. He's taking over my brain here. What's going on? But then he gets to the third line. For every atom belonging to me, as good belongs to you. Whoa, wait a minute. This is a different concept. All of a sudden, he's challenging what's our concept of me? What does this word me mean? What does this word myself mean? I mean, the title, Song of Myself, which sounds so completely arrogant and narcissistic even, we go, wait a minute, this is a self that is defined not as, well, I'm over here being special and you're over there, you know, being ordinary. Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. So this is, we're living in a universe where we're not just a bunch of separate selves. We're not just a bunch of separate, discrete, isolated waves. Apparently, this is a universe where it's one ocean, just one bunch of water that sloshes around, and the one wave over here is what I call Dean, one wave over there is what you call Bob, one wave over there is what you call Judy, one wave over there is what you call Walt Whitman. But it's all just the same water sloshing around. Every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. So he's talking about the self as we understand it. He's talking about the not separate self, the non-dual self. So now we got something. Now we're talking about something here. Now we're talking about the opposite of egotism. We're talking about the reality in which egos have no substantial existence. Okay, so now we're on a completely different footing. Might wonder, how did we get here? How did we realize our status? How did Whitman discover this? And actually, if we're paying close attention, we'll see the answer comes in the very next line. I loaf, right? I loaf, right? I be lazy, right? That's what we call meditation. We give it that long fancy name so that our friends won't come, you know, knocking at the door while we're inside loafing. Right? But as we know, as we've all experienced, the most effective way to meditate is through non-work, non-effort, because every effort to create a non-agitated state of mind is a form of agitation. So what we do is the opposite. We loaf, we take it easy. We let Mother Nature drive. And in fact, look at the rest of that line. I loaf and invite my soul. Oh, what a beautiful description of how meditation works. When we loaf, because if we just said I loaf, period, well, that could just mean you're a lazy bum, right? But if we're loafing in this alert way, what happens is, of course, it's not that the soul was ever separate from us, and that needed to be invited in, but the awareness of the soul, the awareness of the exalted, boundless nature of what we are, the awareness of awareness has to be invited, and the way to do that is through nice, clear-eyed non-doing. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Okay. Now, remember, the title of the book is Leaves of Grass. So this is where he first introduces this motif of the grass. And as you'll see, he picks this up from time to time as we go through. And it becomes, you know, you contemplate yourself, but you got to contemplate something also, yourself as an object, as a separate wave. You got to also, there's got to be some specific other, at least one other wave that you contemplate. And in his case, it's as you'll see, it's everything, but starting with the grass, because the grass grows everywhere. Next section, my tongue, every atom of my blood formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Okay? So you see the oneness with the elements, right? I'm made out, this tongue which is able to utter this poetry, this blood which is able to feed the tongue and feed the brain. What's it made from? It doesn't exist independently. Again, we're all part of the same ocean of being. In this case, we're part of the soil, the air. We're part of the DNA of our parents and their parents and their parents. And specifically, he mentions this soil. This is the beginning subtly of this motif of America. You know, he saw this kind of uniqueness. In a sense, in kind of the best sense, he did believe in American exceptionalism. You know, this was kind of, he was kind of one of the first to kind of see clearly that America seemed to have potentially, anyway, this special destiny of being the place where all kinds of diversity could all come together, could all be embraced. Okay, next subsection. Creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. Okay.
Dean, I can't see that verse. Can you move
Oh, yes.
I don't
Right.
know how
Hang on. Thank
the
you.
cursor's not working.
No, yeah, no,
I only have,
there's a reason for that. Thank you for.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you seeing that now? Kathy, you seeing that now?
Yes, so now creeds and schools.
Yes, yeah, that's what I just read. Good. Okay. Okay. So creeds and schools, right? Schools of philosophy. Creeds means religions. Schools would mean like schools of philosophy. So, okay. He was writing at a time in the early 1850s, 1830s, 40s, 50s. It was a time of great spiritual ferment. You know, there were all these you know, you had not only the imported Christian denominations arguing about, you know, who had the true version of Christianity, excuse me, but then you had, you know, you had the Shakers, you had the new American religion, the Mormons, who were brand new, everyone with their, you know, and then you had philosophies, you had the Transcendentalists, you had, and so what's he saying here? In abeyance, right? Okay, take your creed, take your school. For now, park it at the door, please. Park it at the door. Retiring back a while, suffice it what they are, but never forgotten. Don't worry, I'm not going to take away your religion from you. I'm not going to take away your philosophy, but I'm just asking you to suspend it, to go into this innocent, right? This is what we're saying all the time about meditation. This is Zen mind is beginner's mind. This is to enter into the kingdom of heaven, be like a little child. If you're I have seen something amazing, Whitman is saying. I've seen this incredibly glorious vision of what reality is, of what the self is, of what existence is. But, and I'm inviting you to see it with me, but to do that, I need you to just set aside, don't try to filter it through what you think you already know. Don't try to filter it through your religion and your philosophy, right? Join me in what I'm doing here. I harbor for good or bad. I love this word harbor. You know, just as the harbor welcomes all the boats and ships that come in, right? This is the largeness of him, the largeness of his soul. And again, this is what we do in meditation. We don't exclude, oh, the sound of the barking dog is bad. The sound of the lovely music is good. We harbor for good or bad. We just be wide open like the sky to all kinds of weather. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard. So whatever it is, I let all of experience come through me. I'm completely wide open to it, and I permit it to speak through me at every hazard. I'm not filtering it. I'm not censoring myself. Nature without check, right? In other words, I'm not holding back. I'm letting the full energy of nature speak through me. Nature without check, with original energy. So wow, there is section 1 of 52. This is the mission statement. This is what we're going to do, what he's setting out to do here, this incredible task he's setting himself in this poem, okay? And let's point out before we move on, again, here is, as we mentioned, free verse, right? Free verse, no meter, that is no regular rhythm, no iambic pentameter, anything like that, no rhyme. You know, some people make fun of free verse. Robert Frost famously said, writing free verse is like playing tennis without a net. You know, the idea that you need some kind of structure, right? Well, there is a whole lot of really bad free verse. Absolutely, because people think, hey, this is easy. Well, it's not easy to do it well. Well, it might be easy if you're Walt Whitman and all of nature is flowing through you and forming words. But, you know, as Bob Dylan once said, to live outside the law, you must be honest, right? To live outside the usual laws and structures of how to write poetry, you've got to be tuned in. You've got to be honest to reality. You've got to be honest to the vision and honest to the real internal rhythm. You can feel the rhythm of this stuff. You can't define it. You can't say, oh, this rhythm is iambic trimeter or iambic pentameter or something, but it's rhythmic in the way that the waves rolling in onto the shore are rhythmic, right? They're not regular, they're not rigid in their rhythm, but it's the organic rhythms of energy of nature herself, which is exactly right. Okay, so that brings us to section 2. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. Whoa, wait a minute. We just said
You're,
no.
you're not,
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
you're not coming through.
Can you hear me? 1 2 1 2. No? You hear me now? You hear me now? Hear me now? Put
Yeah.
your thumb up if you're hearing me now. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So houses and rooms are full of perfume. So we just said no regular rhythm, no rhyme, and all of a sudden he hits us with rhythm and rhyme, with meter and rhyme. Do 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 do. Sounds like a freaking nursery rhyme all of a sudden, right? What's going on? What's going on? We can guess it's not an accident. We can guess it's a feature, not a bug. So let's see where he's going with this. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes.
Books.
I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. Okay, you see what he's done here? So he's been talking in the first part about nature, being wide open to nature. Then all of a sudden, we're in houses and rooms. Life in little boxes. This always reminds me of a song that a few of you may remember from the 60s by Malvina Reynolds. Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. Yes, ticky-tacky. So, so this is how most people live their lives, in houses and rooms full of perfumes, full of artificiality, artificial experiences that could prevent you from breathing the natural clarity of the atmosphere. Okay? And it's very appropriate to show the artificiality of that, to write it in artificial sounding verse. Right? So the rinky-dink nursery rhyme sound of that is to show the rinky-dink nursery rhyme nature of that kind of artificial reality, artificial experiences, artificial made-up concepts that most people live in. You know, not only the physical little boxes, but the little boxes of their concepts and their attitudes, and how kind of childish it is. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. And then watch what happens in the second half of that line. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. You feel what's going? Can you hear all those bottles of perfume falling over, toppling over onto each other at the end of that line? The shelves are crowded with perfumes. At the moment that he's talking about it being crowded, the rhythm becomes overcrowded. It breaks, the nice rinky-dink rhythm breaks down. Are you hearing that? I really want to make sure you're hearing that, because it is so brilliant, so technically brilliant, and so aesthetically brilliant to make that choice, to do it, to show you the artificial rinky-dink thing, the thing that most people, he's showing us, hey, you want rhyme, you want rhythm? I can do that, but it's pretty silly, isn't it? Right? You want artificiality? We can live an artificial life. You've been doing that, but it's too stifling. But notice he doesn't condemn it. He doesn't condemn it. Yeah, Kathy?
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking, this verse, whatever the 3 lines you read, would that also be like samsara, you know, just kind of the...
Yeah, absolutely. Samsara is the Buddhist term for exactly that artificiality, that living in artificial concepts and mistaking them for reality, and then going round and round. Samsara literally means wandering in circles, you know, staggering from one box to another. And in that sense, nirvana is coming out of the boxes, coming out into the open, vast space of unbounded, unconceptualized beingness, right? And which is coming up in the next section. But first notice, you know, there is a great saying in one of the non-dual Buddhist teachings. The fool tries to get rid of samsara and attain nirvana. The fool tries to get rid of samsara and attain nirvana, right? That, in other words, the true sage knows you don't have to get rid of samsara. Samsara is fine in its place. It's part of the big picture. You just don't get caught up in it. Don't think it's the absolute reality. So watch how Whitman knows this. I breathe the fragrance, right? Meaning the perfume. I breathe the fragrance myself and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. Right? In other words, I can enjoy it, but I'm not going to get hypnotized by it. I can look at my cell phone and, okay, good, great, I can get this and, you know, cat videos and all that, and then I can put it down. Right? Okay, so look what happens in the next section. He puts it down. He leaves the rooms full of perfumes. He goes outside to nature, which is, you know, for him is where we have the embodiment of original, aboriginal reality. The atmosphere, right? The atmosphere, the clear air. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless, right? This is like everything we're always saying about about the beingness. It's odorless, it's tasteless, it's colorless, but that's a good thing. And it's clear the way he presented that's, like Maharishi said, it's just nothing, but there's something very good about it. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. And here we get, for the first time, we're starting to get the hint of Whitman's sensuality. This book, by the way, this was a scandal. This was considered, actually in one of Emily Dickinson's letters, someone wrote her a letter and asked her, among other things, whether she'd read Leaves of Grass. And she said, no, I haven't, but friends tell me the book is shameful, right? I mean, this was considered like, Whitman actually got fired from a job when when his boss cracked open a copy of Leaves of Grass for, being a pornographer. And so this is the first hint of his sensuality, that the erotic, the sensual, is not excluded from this grand vision of full reality. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. Yum, 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 yum. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. Here we go. I am mad for it to be in contact with me, right? So, those of you who've read Emerson, Thoreau, all that, they have all this wonderful transcendental philosophy, but you can read their voluminous works and never get any hint that there's such a thing as sex in human life. When Thoreau talks about going out into his cabin in the woods, and he talks about the 4 necessaries, the 4 things you would want to have in the cabin that you need to live a good life. You need, what is it? Food, fuel, clothing, something else I forget. And then he says, and then if you get a chance, the 5th thing, you would want some books. And you'd be turning the pages. Hey, Thoreau, what about at least number 6? Where's my woman? Right? Nothing. Right? So Whitman addresses that lack here. Right? I mean, this is very clear. Not only do I want to commune with the universe, with the world, with the universe, I want to commune with it sensually, not only through my spirit, but through my naked body. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. I want to rub it all over my naked body. So now that takes us into the next section. Here he is out in the woods by the bank of the river, where, and naked, kind of, making love to nature, making love to the outdoors. So watch the way he does that. The smoke of my own breath. Remember being kids on a cold morning, waiting at the bus stop and pretending you're smoking a cigarette and, making little rings of steam out of your mouth. The smoke of my own breath. Echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, right? All the vague sounds of the woods. But notice buzzed whispers, it's kind of human, it's alive. Buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine. I don't know if there's actually a plant called love root, but if it is, I'm sure he chose it for the name here. I mean, the sensual, come on, baby, let me show you my love root. Right? Silk thread, crotch and vine. Presumably, he's here describing the crotch of a tree, right? The place where the big limbs separate, and there's some vine hanging over it. But clearly, also, it's a human, in this case, the human naked male body with its crotch and its vine. So, is he talking about the woods? Is he talking about his body? Yes and yes. It's all one. Through the magic of poetry, through the magic of words, he's made them one. my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, right? It's the outer environment, it's his body, all flowing in and out, respiration and inspiration. There's no separation. The sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind. Oh my God, I love that line. First of all, the belched words. How many poets in 1855 have got the audacity? You know, they're all, oh, I'm singing my words. I'm piping, you know, William Blake, you know, piping with this divine piper. But my belched words, right? You belch, you fart, it's all good. It's all, this is the body the way God made it, and God don't make no junk. So great, the sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind. You know, eddies are like little whirlpools. You can see this, his words, they're not just, words are not just abstract intellectual creations, they're creations of the body, like air being belched up, and then they become one with the outer environment and going into little spiral whirlpools. A few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms. You know, there's a reach around going on here. There may be another human going on here. It's all deliberately not made clear because it's not either or, it's all both and. It's all of the above. It's just himself, it's just the woods, it's just himself cavorting with another or others. It's all good. The play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets. Right, so there's the delight alone. That's the, you know, there's Thoreau alone in his cabin. But by the way, working as a journalist, Whitman spent a lot of time in Manhattan, which in the 1850s was busy becoming the first modern city. The first skyscrapers were starting to go up. And he loved that too. He just saw all of it as God's glory. He saw all of it as the infinite manifesting in all these kaleidoscopic finite forms. The delight alone, or in the rush of the streets, or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Isn't that wonderful? Here's the sun coming up. Oh, that's glorious. And here's me, Walt, coming up. That's glorious. We meet, it's like we're equals. Yeah. And then a break. And then, have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Whoa, that came out of left field, right? Now remember, America is still largely an agricultural country when he writes this. When people were talking about wealth, they would talk about acreage. Is 1,000 acres much? Yeah. You got 1,000 acres, you're sitting pretty. But look how he's deconstructing that. He's challenging that. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Like, you know, hey, Richard, happy birthday. I'm going to give you 1,000 acres. Hey, Richard, you're my best friend. Happy birthday. I'm going to give you the earth. You'd be pretty happy. But look where he's going with this. Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. Right? Not you will possess all poems, the origin of all poems. There's a place where all that comes from, and we know what that place is. I don't have to keep saying it. Right? You shall possess the good of the earth and sun, right? Not possess the earth, right? You'd have to be a madman, you know, you'd have to be a Donald Trump to want to do that, right? to want to rule the earth. But the good of the earth, the essence of it, which is all the essence of the sun. And then in parentheses, oh, the audacity of putting this in parentheses, like, oh, by the way, there are millions of suns left, right? If I tell you, happy birthday, Richard, I'm giving you the earth and the sun is the good news. The bad news is the sun's about to be burned out. It's about to burn out. You'd be pretty bummed. But the good news, there's millions of suns left, right? This is the true prosperity model. The infinite emptiness of being is always infinitely full. There's always, earth after earth, sun after sun. There's no shortage. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books, right? Who's he talking about? All the dead writers, the philosophers, the prophets of religion, the great authors. That everyone, if they want wisdom, they go running to the books for wisdom. You don't have to do that. We can do it fresh. And then, very important, you shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself. Right? It's song of myself, it's song of yourself, because it's the song of the self. The self is the ultimate authority and all this stuff. Section 3. I have heard what the talkers were talking, the talk of the beginning and the end. Now again, we mentioned this was a time of great spiritual ferment. In 1843, you had the Millerites, who were this end of the world. You had this Baptist preacher in upstate New York. I think his name was Jonathan Miller, who he thought he decoded all the weird apocalyptic symbolism in the book of Daniel and book of Revelation, and figured out that the world as we know it was going to end on some particular date in 1843. And all these people, they made thousands of converts all over the United States and actually in England and in South America. And some people sold everything they had. They went and they confessed their murders. They visited their neighbors and returned the spoons they had stolen. All of this stuff. So this is true stuff. And they were all expecting to be raptured up into heaven when the second coming came. And this date in, I think it was October 22nd or something, 1843. Then the date came and went, and Miller went, oh, wait a minute, let me check my math. And then he went, oh, no, it's definitely gonna come in this other date, like 6 months hence. And then they got even more believers. By the way, the Seventh-day Adventists in case you're interested, are descended from the Millerites. After the second coming didn't happen, some woman in the movement had a vision where Jesus told her that Miller's math was right, but Jesus didn't come because he was mad at people for keeping the Sabbath on Sunday instead of Saturday. So that's where that was the origin of the Seventh-day Adventists. That was a footnote. So not only that, but then you're starting to get the beginnings of people looking at the fossil record. You're getting Darwin starting to happen, right? So all these debates about what's the beginning of our world as we know it, what's going to be the end of it? The geological argument and the paleontologists and all the different religionists, all the theories. I have heard what the talkers were talking, the talk of the beginning and the end. But I do not talk of the beginning or the end. There was never any more inception than there is now, nor any more youth or age than there is now, and will never be any more perfection than there is now, nor any more heaven or hell than there is now. Okay. You feel the power of that? You just, right? You know, and we've all talked about this stuff before as a concept, not a concept, as a reality, as an experience. But you know, unlike me, unlike most of us, Whitman's a poet. He knows how to put it so that you can feel the power of that reality. In this case, part of it, of course, is hammering it home with that word "now" at the end of every line. It's like, bam, definitive. This the seal of truth. Nor anymore, you know, right? This whole idea that, you know, you earn your way to heaven by earning enough virtue brownie points, like, you know, earning merit badges, uh, you know, in the Cub Scouts. And by the way, it's not just, you know, Christianity that does that. It's a lot of schools of Buddhism that do that. Anytime people stop really getting that clear experience that heaven is right now, or hell, if we create it, is right now, then they'll start projecting it, imagining it into the future. It's all now. And then a break, and then something else. Urge and urge and urge, always the procreant urge of the world, right? Procreant, as in procreation. So again, here comes the body, here comes sexuality, urge, right? The life force, which expresses itself as not only as the sexual urge, but as everything, as the plants pushing their way through the ground, as you know, the forests rising, urge and urge, and and by the way, in the 1850s, there was the beginning of a movement, not just with Whitman, but with certain medical doctors and other people, of this recognizing that the body is good, sex is wholesome, sex is healthy, urge and that it's not some isolated thing which we don't talk about, maybe some shameful thing. It's part of the whole process of nature, which he elaborates on next. Out of the dimness, opposite equals advance. Always substance and increase, always sex, always a knit of identity, always distinction, always a breed of life. Okay, I love this. Out of the dimness, opposite equals advance. So this could be a man and a woman in a dark room. And notice, by the way, they're equals. They're equals, not that the woman is the man's property, as a lot of people felt at the time, and too many people still feel. Out of the dimness, opposite equals advance. So it's man and woman in the dark bedroom, or, you know, in the dark forest, but it's also, you know, all the animals. It's like the proton and the electron, right? The positive charged particle, the negative charged particle. It's all part of the same grand process. It just replicating itself at every level. Always substance and increase. You know, it's the Big Bang. Always substance and increase. Always sex. Always a knit of identity. Right? Always distinction. So knit of identity. We're all the same. We're non-dual, and also distinction. We have our distinctness. Always a breed of life. To elaborate is no avail. Learned and unlearned feel that it is so, right? To elaborate is no avail, right? I'm not going to convince you of this by expounding it as philosophy. All we can do is state it. You're not going to get it through learning. Learned and unlearned feel that it is so, right? You just intuitively, we hear this, we see this, and we know, yeah, we assent to it. It's just, there it is. Of course, it helps if you have a powerful poet like Whitman, right, laying it out for us. To elaborate is no avail. Learned and unlearned feel that it is so. Well, time flies when you're having fun. So, this stuff working for you?
It's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It is good. It is good. So,
Oh, can I
having
ask a
fun.
question
Yes.
about Whitman,
Yeah.
about his sexuality. Was he bisexual? Do you know? Is there anything about that on record? Or
Well,
homosexual? I don't know. I've heard different things.
exactly. Everyone's heard different things. The short answer is who cares? But what to me, what's important is, you know, what the Whitman of flesh and blood, who cares? He's created something bigger and more important, the Whitman that exists in poetry. And that Whitman is, I would call, omnisexual. Omnisexual.
Right, but you
He
just
wants to, I'm gonna just go with my answer here, and then it's time for us to go, Kathy.
Thanks.
But Whitman, the Whitman of the poems, the Walt that we're not talking about the guy, Walter, who cares about him? We're talking about the poetic entity that he's self-created, Walt. And that entity is omnisexual. He wants to make love to the universe. He wants to make love to, he wants to make love to God. And don't you? Don't you? I know I do, right? And if this poem is working, he's inspired that in all of us. He's inspired all of us to, you know, like the picture in the front of the 18th, right? With the hand on the hip and the bedroom eyes, and saying, come on, universe, come on, God, give us a kiss. Right? It's great. It's great. Okay, so see you all next Sunday. And so if you go to the link, if you want to read ahead, and you know, because we're not going to have time to unpack the way I'd like to every line of this. We'll be doing it for a year, which might be fine. But if you feel to, maybe you want to read ahead, maybe you want to even, you know, if you're so moved, mark particular parts that you want to talk about, either because, oh, you're really getting it and it's doing X and Y for you, or because you're really puzzled by it. Okay? So may all beings swiftly have a really successful date with God.
Please, God.
See ya.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.